Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined, as I am every Thursday, by Pat Fitzmaurice and by Jake Ciely from The Athletic. We are talking starts and sits for Week 10. We are into the double digits officially here. Week 10 kicks off tonight for Thursday Night Football as of when we're recording this. Quick reminder for everybody that all of our 2025 consensus rankings and tiers can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. Guys, we have a jam-packed show as always, so let's dive right in here. Starting, as always, with the starting or sitting popular waiver ads. Jake, I want to start with you. Alec Pierce is the number one name I have on this list. Now, I did waiver shows with both of you guys earlier this week with Joe out, and we talked about how maybe wasn't the strongest week. You know, there was no Tyrone Tracy like as there was a week earlier. You know, this obvious guy who's going to be a fill-in starter, and even one of the names that we will get to that maybe could have been close to that. Then there were some real NFL trades that maybe changed up how much we want to be starting them. But Pierce was number one on the consensus rankings earlier in the week. Again, at this point, it was borderline like just, you know, pick your preference depending on the person and the type of player you like. So we're going to be most of the time receivers, honestly. But Pierce, for you, Jake, is he somebody that you're interested in starting this week? He's, you know, coming off of just another strong game.
Yeah, I, honestly, yes, but it hasn't changed. Like, this isn't one where, like, oh, pick him up this week and because of what happened last game where Daniel Jones threw 800 times trying to come back in that game. It really comes down to it's Alec Pierce has been this for weeks and weeks now. So he goes into the conversation of Brandon Cooks from past years, Troy Franklin from this year, Kayshon Boutte when he was healthy, and hopefully he gets back to healthy. Like, he's been startable as a wide receiver 3. Rashid Shaheed, who we're probably going to talk about today. Like, it's the wide receiver 3s, which have plenty of upside, mostly because Daniel Jones takes multiple shots downfield to him each game, and he's probably connecting on at least one of them. The downside is, you know, you look at his game log, and I know it's been more good than bad of late, but you still just go back to week 6 against Arizona, 2 for 4 for 48. 2 catches for 48 yards is cool, but no touchdown, and like that's the upside, not the upside, that's the downside of Pierce, is that doesn't actually have a touchdown in the year. This is all yards. This is all big plays. So do you want to play him every single week? Yeah, as my wide receiver 3, because as of my wide receiver 3, I can take the good with the bad. If it's my number 2, that's a different conversation, but he doesn't need to be your number 2. So I don't know about you, Fitz, but I felt like Pierce has been this for a while now. So it's not necessarily waiver and pick him up. It's just been, this is who he's been, and it's just time for people to understand this is who he is.
Yeah, I mean, Derek Brown, my colleague, gave me, he kind of gave me the answer key on Alec Pierce. It's like against teams that play a lot of single high safety coverage. That's when you want to play Alec Pierce because his target share and yards per route run go way up against teams that run a lot of single high. Last week, Steelers run single high at one of the higher rates in the league and 6 catches, 119 yards. Now Pierce gets the Falcons, who I think play single high at like one of the highest rates in the league. They're either 1 or 2. So another good spot for him, even though I think the Falcons generally do a little bit better against perimeter receivers than the Steelers do, but it still looks like a pretty good spot for him. In principle, though, I kind of agree, Jake. I mean, Pierce generally more attractive against teams that play a lot of man than zone, I think, just because like he is running those deep routes and you sort of want him getting one-on-one coverage and being able to cook guys downfield. I said on the show yesterday, he kind of reminds me of like a poor man's Jordy Nelson. Like, he's a problem with his speed and size if you have him one-on-one downfield. So I agree. I mean, I think he's pretty much playable most weeks, but especially this week.
You had him, Fitz, as like your flag plant a week ago. Do you feel stronger or, you know, less strong, less convicted than you did a week ago?
I'm going to rest on my laurels on the flag plant and not do a repeat flag plant on Alec Pierce. But I have him ranked in the same high-end wide receiver 3 spot I had him last week. I think I've got him basically the same in the rankings, like wide receiver 28, 29.
Okay, let's go to another wide receiver here, and I'll stick with you, Fitz, because it's one of the Packers. Christian Watson, is he somebody that, you know, with Tucker Kraft now, not that they're the same type of player, but just another, you know, mouth that they don't have to feed in this offense now. Watson looking good, coming back from the injury, being a big play guy again. Is he somebody that you're willing to start in week 10?
It's borderline. I've got him in wide receiver 39, so it's going to depend on roster context for fantasy managers, buys, injuries, etc. Watson is a big play guy. He's 6'4" and fast, kind of like Alec Pierce in that regard. Average depth of target so far this season, 23.1 yards, which is crazy. His career average depth of target, 15.9 yards, which still puts him squarely in the vertical receiver category. But Watson has not really been a prolific target earner throughout his career. So it's been kind of boom or bust for him week to week. Maybe now, though, with Tucker Kraft out for the season, with Matthew Golden a little banged up, with Jaden Reed still working his way back from injury, maybe we can expect at least 6 or 7 targets for Watson this week. And what should be a pretty competitive game against the Eagles. That's the hope if you're starting him anyway.
Jake, what do you think about Watson?
Watson has been in my waiver column since he came back, and it actually goes into the Alec Pierce conversation, is that you're going to get good games, you're going to get bad games. There's very few that are just consistent in between. He's not Jacoby Myers. Neither one of them are. We're talking about Jacoby as potentially a situation where he could be back to that wide receiver 3 who gets you 8 to 14 every single week, where these guys get you 3 and then they get you 18. So that's what Christian Watson is. And yeah, sure, it does help a little bit without Kraft, but Kraft wasn't a huge target getter outside of 2 games. It was more the touchdown department. So Christian Watson was going to do that anyway. I have Christian Watson as I've been having Christian Watson as a fringe wide receiver 3. It's just you have to take the good with the bad. And if you don't want that in your lineup, you don't want that, honestly.
One more receiver here, Parker Washington, who, when we did the show, Fitz, you, me, and Debro on Monday, was like the consensus number 1 guy. Again, not like you guys were saying go spend all of your remaining fab to get him, but he was the guy at the top of the rankings. Then, of course, the Jags trade for Jacoby Myers. Right away, receiver trades, like they do sometimes take some time, to transition and adjust to that new team. Of course, obviously Travis Hunter on IR, Brian Thomas Jr. banged up, De'Ami Brown, concussion. So there's seemingly a path here for Parker Washington, even with Jacoby Myers in town, but he did kind of get bumped down the waiver consensus rankings after that trade was made on Tuesday morning. So as of now, kind of taking all those factors into consideration, Fitz, where is Parker Washington ranked for you? Is he somebody that you're willing to start in week 10?
Wide receiver 41. Which feels a little too high. Hopefully everyone who did put in waiver claims for him on Monday revised those claims after the acquisition of Jacoby Myers. And rather than a $10 acquisition, he was like a $2 or $3 acquisition. The matchup here is bad. The Jaguars play the Texans, who have one of the 2 or 3 best pass defenses in the league. Houston has allowed the 4th fewest fantasy points per game to wide receivers. And the Jaguars receiver situation is pretty messy now with Myers coming in. De'Ami Brown is coming back from a concussion. We don't know how involved Jacoby Myers is going to be right off the bat. Maybe he only plays a pretty limited share of snaps and just kind of slowly is fed parts of the playbook. And then there's the status of Brian Thomas Jr. He is what's being called a low-grade high ankle sprain, and as we know, there's really no such thing as a low-grade high ankle sprain, so I suspect he's going to be out. And that's what the ranking is based on. If miraculously BTJ does play, don't start Parker Washington. But I don't know, man. I have Christian Watson and Parker Washington separated by a couple spots in my rankings, but I feel much better about Watson than I do about Washington.
Jake, similar range for you. He's also a name that you and I talked about on the waivers short form on Monday.
Yeah, same range, but also same range as his new teammate, just because the risk of the first game. But also, Fitz just said everything when we talked on the waiver show. Is I might not even want to use him this week, and that was before they traded for Jacoby Myers. That I would potentially pick up Parker Washington and just put him on the bench for a week until we can get a better matchup, because there's been 2 double-digit scores, 2 against the Texans all year. Oh, those guys. Arguably the 2 best wide receivers in fantasy, Puka Nacua and Jackson Smith-Njigba. I don't think anybody would say Parker Washington is even 50% either one of those. So, yeah, I don't really want to start Parker Washington, wide receiver 4 territory. He's probably got some floor because they're going to see volume, especially in the slot usage. But depending on, there's already talk that they're going to be pushing Jacoby outside, so that keeps some of that work there. But even so, I mean, we're talking floor is in a full point PPR, you still might not even get double-digit points.
One more player here that I want to talk about in the waivers section, tight end, where it was a little bit stronger at this position than some of the other ones. Colston Loveland is a guy I want to highlight. Jake, we talk a lot about, and you have weighted on some of this historical data about kind of that post-buy rookie bump sort of situation for receivers. People like to think about just not even the post-buy, but the second half in general for pass catchers. It's usually talking about wide receivers. Would you extend that to somebody like Colston Loveland that, hey, maybe this could be the big breakout? Or do you look at his big game in week 9 as more of, hey, this was a good game that became a great game because of some horrible tackling and kind of this fluky last play, and that's why we're so excited about him? Where do you come down on Loveland, both rest of the season and in terms of ranking him as a tight end for week 10?
Wait, you mean the Bears don't get to face the Bengals every single week? Good news, though. They get to face the Giants this week, which is just as bad. So there you go on that end of it. But no, really what it comes down to, it has nothing to do with pre-post buy, being a rookie, whatever it might be. Loveland falls into the situation. The situation is that Komet was out. He got banged up again, so now he's out. And then the fact is Odunze is not 100%, which we're going to talk about. Plant flag player, going to bring him up, but wasn't 100% in that game, and an opportunity against a really bad defense in a game that ended up being a shootout. But I say all to say this, just like Gadsden, I'll take the chance because it's tight end. And that's why. That's all it comes down to is this. If we were talking about a wide receiver, different story. You could throw him into the Quentin Johnston bucket now, is that inconsistency. But outside of McBride, Bowers, definitely Warren, but maybe Kittle. Like, Kittle is even a question mark at this point. There aren't a lot of tight ends where I'm like, yay, this is a difference maker. So I'm going to chase somebody who could be, because now we're considering Gadsden as a potential top 5 tight end for the rest of the year. We just lost Tucker Kraft. If Loveland is a 1 week thing, doesn't do anything against the Giants, and then that was it, that was the fun, I'm fine, because you know what? The waivers are filled with the Zach Ertz and Harold Fanons of the world. I will take a chance that a tight end can now be a top 5 like Gadsden. And if not, I'll just go back to waiver. So yes, I am looking to start him. I'm looking to chase the upside against the Giants as a top 10 play. He's not up there by Gadsden. I have him at 9, one spot in front of Pitts, who's actually been remarkably consistent. If you're considering Pitts at a tight end position, he's consistent. So I will chase the upside, but expect that it's still tight end. It could go immediately sideways.
Fitz, Colston Loveland is tight end 10 in the consensus rankings for the week. That's in half PPR scoring. He's one spot behind Pitts in ECR here. So where is he for you, Fitz? Is he somebody that you're willing to start this week?
Yeah, I'm with Jake. I have Loveland at TE9, one spot ahead of Pitts. And I think you're probably playing him unless you're a tight end hoarder who has him sitting behind Trey McBride or Tyler Warren or something. Jake kind of put it in a really good way. Like, we're not point chasing last week. We're upside chasing here. And there's definitely upside for Loveland if Cole Kmet doesn't play. The potential snag is that Loveland actually got in a limited practice on Wednesday, which I think was before clearing protocol. I don't know if that means he was just pedaling a bike on the sideline or something. Maybe Kmet is the rare player who quickly clears concussion protocol and plays 7 days later. But even if Kmet plays, it does feel like the snaps are starting to tilt toward Loveland a little bit. And it's easy to understand why. He was a top 10 draft pick. So never mind the big numbers last week. The Bengals just routinely get crushed by tight ends. What matters is that Loveland has been getting more involved the last 3 weeks, playing more snaps, earning more targets. And it seems like the offensive environment in Bears-Giants should be pretty good.
Before we get to the plant your flag segment, I should have mentioned this at the top of the show. There are 4 teams on bye this week, and there are some good ones. The Cowboys, the Bengals, the Chiefs, and then also the Titans. So only 4 teams, but a lot of good teams, a lot of bad defenses that we enjoy seeing our players go up against. So it's not quite the 6-team bye apocalypse, but there's some good names there. So just keep that in mind when you are making your start-sit decisions. Again, it's Kansas City, Dallas, Tennessee, and Cincinnati. Let's continue the Bears conversation here, Jake, and go to your plant your flag player. You already mentioned him. It's Odunze coming off of a true dud.
His first 0 of his career. So there you go. And I know a lot of people are worried. And I will put a caveat on this. This is Thursday before we get Thursday practice reports. Odunze was out there limited, actually, I think severely limited. I don't think that he did much actually outside of on the sidelines on Wednesday. So if Odunze is playing through an injury still, I would kind of shift this one. But I wanted to bring up Odunze just because I think people are panicking and they're looking to potentially sell. And I saw, I don't remember who it is, and I'm not coming for them. I just disagree. Obviously, we're always right and wrong about some things, but I saw somebody out there that said like he's now wide receiver 3 going forward. I'm like, no, he's not. He's had a little tough stretch there, but he's not 100%. And he's still Odunze. And I bring up the matchup because the one thing that he's done well, and DJ Moore has done the same thing, it's more so of a Caleb Williams factor, is they do really well against man instead of zone coverage. The Giants are one of the man heaviest teams in the league. They're top 3. He actually averages, that being Odunze and DJ Moore too, more fantasy points per target, more yards per route run. And actually Odunze has almost 54% of the team's air yards when there's man coverage. So this is a matchup where if he's healthy, even 90% healthy, he's going to get back to being right. And that's why I wanted to plant my flag, because I think there's people considering benching him in 10-team strong wide receiver team leagues this year. I would not bench Odunze if he's out there.
Fitz, do you have any consideration for benching Odunze, or is this like a very easy continue starting him for you too?
No, I mean, it certainly was a weird anomaly that in a game where I think the Bears had more than 500 yards of total offense, that their number one receiver would be shut out. And in a game where there were, I think, 43 plays in the game of 10 or more yards. Hopefully that means Rome gets a little extra love from Caleb Williams this week. It's a good matchup. Jake pointed out the man versus zone thing and how man heavy the Giants are. And just generally the Giants have given up the 7th most fantasy points to wide receivers. And they might not have Paulson Adebo, who's been out with a knee injury and not back at practice on Wednesday. So yeah, I like the call here.
Fitz, you and I are in a dynasty league with some other people in the industry, Tom Strachan being one of them. He was winless in this dynasty league. He beat me this week, and the difference would have been Rome Odunze scoring anything for me. That him getting to 0.
Even a 1?
Cost me the loss again. And I was the first place team. I think I needed like 4 points from him. But I was the first place team, and I lost to the 0-8 Tom Strachan-led squad, totally rebuild team. Thanks in no small part to that Rome Odunze dud. So that was a tough one. Fitz, you mentioned the Giants. Your plant your flag player is also in this game playing for the Giants side.
How about that?
Yeah, so I mentioned the offensive environment being pretty good for Giants Bears Sunday. The Bears' 2 best cornerbacks, Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon, both really good players on injured reserve. Bears edge rusher Dio Odangbo just tore his Achilles. Safety Kevin Byard and linebacker TJ Edwards missed practice on Wednesday. The Bears defense is a mess right now, and we kind of saw that last week with the Bengals hitting, I think, 10 pass plays of 20 or more yards. Bengals and Cowboys are on bye this week. They are the fun teams for fantasy with these high-powered offenses and terrible defenses. Bears are kind of the sneaky fun team for fantasy with this shaky, injury-riddled defense and an offense that's starting to click. So I've already bet the over in this game. I think the Bears are going to score enough to push the Giants and make Dart keep the pedal to the metal. And Dart, over the last, since week 6, he's averaged 24.9 fantasy points per game. Only quarterbacks who've averaged more over that span, Justin Herbert, Joe Flacco. I think Dart has another big game in Chicago. Although, pay attention to the weather. Somehow it's going to be like 64 degrees in Chicago on Friday, going down to 35 as a high on Sunday, and it could be a little breezy too. So just make sure it's not that breezy. I think they said winds of like 15 to 20 miles an hour. That is below the panic threshold for me, but approaching the concern threshold.
Jake, where is Jaxson Dart ranked for you?
As a top 10 quarterback, and I'll tell you, he's number 7. Only because what Fitz brought up, like as of right now, playing the risk, I have him 1 spot behind Bo Nix because of the weather in Chicago. But if everything's fine, I felt better about Dart than Nix, basically outside of those 2 games with the matchup. The Denver Broncos have one of the worst schedules, especially during the playoffs, just as a side note.
Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably deep in the stats, injury reports, and matchups. On Hard Rock Bet, you can put your fantasy football knowledge to the test. Try your first bet on Hard Rock Bet today. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you get not only your winnings, but $150 in extra bonus bets. And if you're looking for an edge before you lock in, check out the Hard Rock Bet Stats Hub. It's loaded with trends, streaks, and stats to help guide your picks. Numbers don't lie, and neither does the data in there. Check out the Stats Hub now. Get the edge and bet with confidence. The Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook app is the only legal sportsbook for whenever you're in Florida. It's also live in Arizona, Ohio, New Jersey, Indiana, Tennessee, Virginia, Illinois, and Colorado. Coming soon to more states too. Plus, Hard Rock Bet offers new promos every single day. So whenever you're listening, just open the app and check out what you've got any day of the week. Download the Hard Rock Bet app and make your first deposit. Now let's get into the start-sit player debates. We will start with running backs as always. Jake, Breece Hall or Kamani Vidal in Week 10? Who are you ranking higher?
I'm not coming for you, Warren. How's this a debate? Breece Hall by 10 miles, 50 miles, 100 miles. Like, I don't want Vidal near my team at this point. Vidal proved for one game that he was like, oh, yeah, that was fun. The same thing he did last year. And then he turned into, oh, he's a volume guy that's complete meh. And then we saw Jarrett Patterson off the street, now also involved as the potential lead. So Kamani Vidal, 100% for me, is not only just a bench, but I would even consider dropping him if you're in a shallow league. Like, I am off the Vidal train. I wouldn't be surprised if Patterson has more value. And this is a journeyman that was cut from the Lions previous years. So it's Breece Hall, and like Breece Hall, and then Breece Hall Jr. And then we get to Vidal.
Wow. Well, for the record, these guys are back-to-back in ECR.
How?
Were
they afraid Breece Hall was going to get traded?
I don't know. Well, Breece Hall is ranked higher. He's RB 17. This is in half PPR scoring. But Kamani Vidal is RB 18. You know, Hall going up against a very tough Cleveland running defense. You know, Vidal, he's had two good games this year.
If Vidal finishes one spot, so I have Breece Hall inside my top 15. So I'll say this: if Vidal finishes top 15, you guys figure out something I have to do on the show next week, because I will guarantee that's not happening.
I know what I'm rooting for now. Please, everybody listening, drop some ideas in the comments of stuff Jake can do that is still somewhat professional. I have Kamani
Vidal at 33. To be clear,
so that's a massive gap there. Yeah, like I said, they're back to back in ECR. Fitz, do you also see like this as a useless, worthless question and consider drop Vidal, or are you going to get away here? I didn't say it was
worthless. I just I didn't know how this was a question in my mind.
No, in fact, I will make the case for Kamani Vidal, who I would start ahead of Breece Hall. Yes. Here's the thing. First of all, better offense, way better offense, not even close. Less difficult matchup. I'm definitely worried about the Chargers having lost Joe Alt for the season, and they traded for Saints tackle Trevor Penning, but Alt is hard to replace, one of the best offensive tackles in the league. But with Breece Hall, Jake, like, he's been pretty predictable this year. He smashes against bad defenses and bricks against decent or good defenses. Hall has had big games against the Bengals, Cowboys, and Dolphins. Hasn't done much of anything against anyone else except the Steelers in Week 1, who Kamani Vidal happens to be playing this week. The other thing with Breece Hall, and this is kind of an intangible thing, like, where is the Jets' morale going to be at this week after the sell-off fire sale at the trade deadline? Like, would it be a surprise if the Jets just laid a giant egg this week? I don't think it would be. So, I mean, like, we've got a good team and a functional offense. Like, I'll take the running back in that environment rather than Breece Hall playing in the wreckage of the New York Jets.
Yeah, I was going to ask Jake on Hall, like, if he's somebody who, because the defense is what was really gutted, you know, at the trade deadline for New York. So, you know, we know Breece Hall can catch passes. He only has 4 catches across the last 3 games combined, so that hasn't been something he's been doing lately. If they get behind, I know it's the Browns, but, you know, Quinton Judkins can probably run on this team without Quinnen Williams. So if the Browns get out to a lead, do you feel like Breece Hall can still be a valuable fantasy asset, or do you think the Jets need to be in this game and kind of rally and have the morale that Fitz is maybe thinking they won't have in order for Breece Hall to be an effective fantasy contributor?
I think he'd be effective no matter what. I mean, it wasn't an amazing game, but he had a decent game against the Broncos where it was a lot of the volume. And that's where I'm going with, like, the volume for Hall versus volume for Vidal, I'm just going to take the volume for Hall, even though that's kind of the game that you would say that Vidal's had. But, 2 of the last 3 games, it's been 50-50. He had the really good game to start things, terrible game, good game, terrible game for Vidal. I just think that I've seen enough that Vidal is not impressive as a running back for me. And I think that's what we knew about him last year. So I'm just going to take the talent. And to give you an idea of some of the names, it's a potential split backfield that I have Vidal behind. Now he can move up because there's some injuries in there, but throwing the injuries out, like not even coming out, like David Montgomery, split backfield, Rashad White, split backfield, Kenneth Walker, split backfield. Like I'm just going to take the Travion Henderson, likely with no Ramondre Stevenson, Travis Etienne looked great after the bye. Again, he bounced back. Like all those names, I'm just going to start over somebody in a split backfield that I just don't think is a very impressive running back. Like I said, I'm happy to be wrong on this one.
Oh, I'll be happy to be wrong too, since we get to pick for you to do something.
Split backfield. What are we talking about, Jake? Like Vidal had 72% of the offensive snaps last week. Patterson was
it's coming because they gave. That's what I'm saying. They're coming to give Patterson more. I'm just telling you. Like it's, in my opinion, Vidal's time of guaranteeing 20 touches is done. In my opinion.
I mean, he's had 100-yard rushing days in 2 of his last 4 games. So like
he also had I won't say it, in 2 of the last 4 games. It's been 50-50.
All right. I mean, like your colleague Michael Salfino of The Athletic, like he has a great comp. He comps running backs to closers. It's more about opportunity than it is about talent a lot of the times. No question Breece Hall is more talented than Kamani Vidal. I don't think anyone is pushing back on that. But like Breece Hall is the closer on the Rockies right now. Like there's just not a lot of meat on that bone. Like give me the less effective closer for the Dodgers.
And that's my point. I don't know that Vidal is the closer. That's what I'm saying. My stance.
Snapshare says he is, but we'll see, I guess.
I just gave you the whole reason. You can call it Snapshare all you want. Patterson got worked in, and I think that's going to be more of a factor this week. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm saying I just don't think this is Vidal's 90%, 70%, 80% backfield now.
Who was the closer on the Rockies this year, Fitz? I can't even think of who it was.
Jeez, I don't know.
They didn't win any games. It didn't matter.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, they probably didn't even have a closer. All right, let's go to another running back debate here. Tyrone Tracy Jr. versus Jordan Mason. They're a little further apart in ECR than Hall and Vidal were. They're still pretty close to each other. Tracy is ranked higher in ECR. Fitz, I'll start with you on this one. Tracy or Jordan Mason?
Yeah, I mean, this is just, it all comes down to the status of Aaron Jones for me. If he's out, I want Mason. If Aaron Jones plays, I want Tracy. And Jones has a sprained AC joint. Relatively minor injury by NFL standards, but sometimes players miss a week with a sprained AC joint. So it totally depends on Jones' status, and he missed practice on Wednesday.
I really wanted to find somebody to include against Tyrone Tracy Jr., just coming off of like, hey, we were all really excited last week. I mean, Debra, I think, had him ranked as like a top 14 running back for the week or something. He was very, very excited. Yeah. And then obviously it doesn't pan out. Devin Singletary's involved, like terrible game for Tracy. I couldn't really find a great like name to put him against. Just looking at the rankings and looking at your guys' rankings, it was kind of tricky to find a good one here. So like I said, I went with Mason. I do recognize that it's a little tricky, like at this point in the week, not knowing Aaron Jones' status. Jake, do you see it similar in that the status of Aaron Jones will determine which side you take, or would you go with one of these guys regardless?
No, 100%, because if Aaron Jones, what we talked about last week, he's the RB2 and RB2. He's the clear lead. He actually was dominating before he got hurt in that game. So I say Aaron Jones is clearly ahead, which would put Jordan Mason behind Tracy if he's active. And then Jordan Mason gets the bulk of the work if there is no Aaron Jones. So we're in agreement. Vince and I, like, this is going to determine 100% on the health of Aaron Jones. If you want to toss up, I don't know if these are good for, like, I have Tracy one spot behind RJ Harvey, even though it's all touchdown luck that's changed for him. It hasn't been the usage, but I'd rather go for the fact that RJ Harvey in the passing game versus the fact that, you know, you would hope that the Bears can push the factor and say that Tracy is going to get more work because it's going to be a passing game opportunity. But you have the Jaxson Dart, Devin Singletary stealing potential touchdowns. And then in what we thought should be the Tracy game, like I had Tracy as a top 20 running back. Tracy last year, every single time he had double-digit touches, scored double-digit fantasy points except for once. And we saw the production. It was just the concern of the fumbling. And then Brian Dable said, okay, that's cool, fine, whatever. First game, 50-50 split. And that was before Tracy got banged up. Singletary actually only had 2 touches after Tracy got hurt. So it was a 50-50 split before that even happened. So that's why I would say that Tracy versus like a Harvey, Tracy versus a David Montgomery, I'd probably go with both of those in another split backfield situation.
Fitz, we typically avoid like guys on Thursday night just because of the nature when this episode comes up. But for those who are listening prior to that game, since it was brought up by Jake, what do you think about RJ Harvey versus Tracy?
Yeah, this is going to make me look dumb because he just scored 3 touchdowns last night, and I'm going to recommend against playing him because he hasn't played even a third of the offensive snaps in 5 straight games.
You're not wrong.
Like, he's not like, I don't want to bet on the touchdown luck, and maybe he keeps it going, but this feels like almost like not quite this disgusting, but like the Nick Westbrook-Akine thing from last season where like
that's who I compared Harvey to. I legitimately compared him to Nick Westbrook-Akine.
Yes. Yeah, where he's getting like 3 targets a game and he just keeps scoring touchdowns, and it's like, how can this continue? But it continues for like 6 weeks or whatever. So it feels like that is going on with RJ Harvey. The only thing I like about RJ Harvey is that like Sean Payton running backs always catch a lot of passes, and J.K. Dobbins is not catching any passes. So maybe if Harvey is just the designated pass catcher in that backfield, like that's how he starts to gain value. And we did see him have like 5 catches last week. So maybe that is his path to something more than just this heavy touchdown dependence.
Let's go to some wide receiver debates here. We were talking about the Jets with Breece Hall. Let's go with another Jet here. Garrett Wilson looking like he's going to return, at least as of the last time I saw. Correct me if you guys have seen anything different as of Thursday morning. Keep an eye on it. We'll see what that looks like. Against Marvin Harrison Jr., who looks like a different receiver with Jacoby Brissett under center. I wonder what you guys think about that continuing. Is that something that you... do you see that as more of a fluke, like, hey, this was a fun game, or is that something that you do expect and will be ranking him as if that's kind of more along the lines of what to expect going forward? Jake, I'll start with you. Garrett Wilson or Marvin Harrison Jr. this week?
I like Garrett Wilson, and I know that the team could be like nothing left, but the team really had nothing left majorly. Like the offense, as you brought up earlier, that's not really what was affected at the trade deadline. And so Garrett Wilson, for whatever he's saying, is like, oh, Justin Fields isn't that good of a passer, but at least he can support one wide receiver, and he was doing it. So I'm going to go with healthy Garrett Wilson. I know it's funny. Like I've talked about this on my podcast, like just did the Scoop City for The Athletic, and the perception for the Marvin Harrison situation is certainly there. And if you go back and watch, whether it's watching or metrics, with Kyler Murray and Jacoby Brissett, they're almost identical for Marvin Harrison. The big beneficiary has been Trey McBride. Trey McBride sees the massive jump with Jacoby Brissett, especially in the touchdown department. But yards per route run, on target percentage, touchdown target percentage, fantasy points per target are almost identical for Harrison with Murray and Brissett. But I will say there's something to be said. We've done this as long as we've done it. I think Fitz would agree with me. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but you kind of said it at the beginning. There's kind of like a shift in the feel for the team. Like the team has even said like the huddle felt different. So I will give Marvin Harrison a slight boost, but I'll still play Wilson in front of him. I was kind of throwing that out as like, don't overreact to think like all of a sudden Marvin Harrison is top 10 based off of one game. There is a boost, but I would say the bigger boost is for McBride.
It's interesting, Fitz. Like it's a great case study in like reading between the lines. It feels like every quote that has come out of like the coaching staff or the players in Arizona is just like they seem to be not saying it, but saying that Jacoby Brissett like just does the little things different than Kyler. That it's just better leadership. You know, has played better on the field in certain ways. Like it just feels like the vibes are very different, like Jake said.
Yeah, it's funny that they put Kyler on IR because that feels like Jonathan Gannon not wanting to answer questions from reporters every week for the next month about the status of Kyler and who the starter is. I pretty much agree with everything Jake just said. I am going with Garrett Wilson. He's played 6 games this season. He's had 8 or more targets in all of them. He's wide receiver 9 in fantasy points per game. No matter what we think of Justin Fields as a passer, Fields has not hindered the fantasy value of Garrett Wilson at all this season. And I am willing to buy that Jacoby Brissett has been at least a slight upgrade for Marvin Harrison Jr. But Harrison has a tough matchup this week against the Seahawks. Like that is a legit pass defense, and they're playing in Seattle. Harrison's probably going to see a lot of Devon Witherspoon. Really tough individual matchup. I like Wilson here.
It's funny. I this was like several weeks ago at this point, but I remember earlier in the year making a point about how it felt like Garrett Wilson was having a worse year than he was. This is obviously like pre getting hurt, because like you said, Fitz, like Fields was still throwing to him and he was still, having productive days. It just felt like the Jets are so terrible that like vibes wise, he must be having a terrible season. And it really was like not as bad, as it might have felt in terms of the vibes. With Garrett Wilson this week, Jake, did you say where do you have him ranked? I'm curious where you guys actually come down on him specifically.
No, I didn't, but I can tell you specifically. I have Garrett Wilson. I'm looking for the plus because I know he was I have him in top 20. I have Garrett Wilson at 19. And I know it's a really bad matchup with the Browns, but look who he's there with. He's DJ Moore, Cortland Sutton, who's been boomer bust. Chris Olave, not the best matchup against the Panthers. That people might not know that, but at the same time, I mean, Panthers have been vulnerable. It's been, they could just go out there. The Panthers are going to be like, "Hey, we're not covering anybody but Chris Olave. Good luck. Like, see what you can do." So he's in names where, like, if you wanted to start some of those, I don't have a problem with it. But Garrett Wilson's been top 15 before this. My only concern here is if it wasn't for the Browns, like if you switch those matchups and said Browns and Panthers, I'd probably push Garrett Wilson back into the top 15 where he was.
He's 33 in consensus, but that's because there are analysts who don't have him ranked, waiting to see what happens with the injury. So that's why I wanted to get a number to it. Fitz, where did you have him ranked?
Oh, I've got him wide receiver 10.
10.
And I know that
that
kind of contradicts my earlier comments about what if the Jets just morale-wise are a complete train wreck. But part of it is that
what if they're like, haha, look, we're still gonna do it and come out and like prove everybody wrong.
They could. And but I also think like trying to run on the Cleveland Browns is just like beating your head against the wall. So I think they have to throw to Garrett Wilson out of necessity. But
so you're saying it's a Cam Scatterbo dream?
Pretty much. Exactly. You talked about like just feeling like it hasn't been a great season for Garrett Wilson. I wound up getting him in a lot of leagues, and that wasn't necessarily a guy I was going into drafts targeting, but he just would fall to me. And to the point where I thought he was good value. So, and like I've been just, before he got hurt, I was just delighted by how good he's been with Justin Fields and how like Justin Fields doesn't work for anyone else there. Plus the fact that they have nothing around him. And I don't know if Adonai Mitchell gets any run for the Jets in his first game with them, but like he is pretty much the only game in town as far as Jets wide receivers. So that certainly helps the target outlook and a good reason why he's got at least 8 targets in every game.
I have a question for Fitz because he has him at 10. Do you have Garrett Wilson in front of Nico Collins?
I do.
Okay. Because I was looking, we don't have Nico Collins on the list, but I actually put this up in my column and I noticed that 1.3 fantasy points per target versus 2 with CJ Stroud. And then if you look at the team target percentage, it isn't even that high. I know a lot of people are like, oh, Mills targets him. And I went back and I'm like, I don't think he does like more than he normally does. 50% target share. That's 5th best. Now, a lot of those wide receivers aren't on the team anymore, and it's a little different, but that's only the last 3 years since Nico Collins actually became Nico Collins. So I was curious if Fitz had that. I actually have them super close. I was just curious if that you had Nico Collins that low. Well, not that low, but you know what I'm saying.
Where do you have Nico ranked, Jake?
I have him like 13 or 14.
Okay. So that's where I've got him too. 13.
I have 14.
Okay.
Let's do another wide receiver one here. Deebo Samuel or DK Metcalf. Metcalf obviously coming off a very poor game for the Steelers. Deebo in this interesting quarterback situation with Mariota there. Obviously Terry McLaurin still banged up. Like there could be opportunity there. Going up against the Lions. So who do you guys like? But these are two, by the way, that are next to each other in ECR. Deebo is wide receiver 21. DK Metcalf is wide receiver 22. Fitz, I'll start with you on this one. Deebo or DK?
So this is a toss-up for me. DK is wide receiver 39.5 point PPR fantasy scoring over the last 3 weeks. And there's only been one game this year where he's had more than 7 targets. And I was always a little uncomfortable, ill at ease with the way he was doing it early on with the much lower average depth of targets than he's had for his career and like the much greater yards after catch. Like he kind of went from being Mike Evans to being DJ Moore or something. It was like a weird shift kind of necessitated by how Aaron Rodgers has been playing for the Steelers. So not totally at ease with him. And as as for Debo, like you would think he would be heavily involved this week with Terry McLaurin re-injuring his quad and probably being out for the rest of the season. And Debo gets the Lions, who are easier to throw on than run on. But I don't know, man. Like, Washington just seems like a sinking ship. Like, I'm going to go with Metcalf here.
Yeah, I totally, like, again, we've talked a lot about vibes, like with Cardinals and the Jets. Like, it feels like even the fan base in Washington has really embraced, like, just like, or sorry, I shouldn't say embraced, I should say accepted that, like, this is just a lost, like, finished season. So you wonder how that will maybe impact the players to a small degree. Jake, what do you think, Samuel or Metcalf?
I'm sorry, I was chuckling because it almost sounded like you were going to go Debo after all of that, like the way you set it up. So Debo's last 3 games, fantasy points per game, he's 84th. Like, 4.3. Like, it's been miserable. And I say that to say is, like, I want to say Debo. I want to say Debo because we saw him 100% earlier this year. We saw that he can be productive without Terry McLaurin, and we saw those really nice games against Atlanta and the Chargers, which were, like, Atlanta at the time was one of the defenses we were really worried about. So, like, there's all the appeal there, or not, that's being DK Metcalf. Or no, that was Debo. That was my point there. It was Debo. To go back to DK Metcalf is what I meant to say, is that he's been inconsistent. It's been wide receiver 30, wide receiver 5, wide receiver 40-something, wide receiver 12, 9, 40, like, Fitz is right, and it's been the usage which has been weird, but I'm going to give him the slight edge just because at least it's been a little bit better than it's been for like, maybe Debo's not 100% again. Like, maybe, like, if you watch the past couple of games, like, is he playing through something? Is he not the healthy guy he was earlier this year? So I would love to say Debo because I want Debo to be, like, back to what he was doing. I had him in a few spots in deeper leagues, but I feel like just DK is a better bet at this point, just how they look recently, despite, like, to go back, and I'm not like, haha, like, again, I'm prepared to be wrong on Vidal, but the same thing is DK has 2 really good games and 2 really stinkers in the last 4 games since their bye. Debo has all stinkers, so you could kind of, like, just argue it that way.
Let's do some more rapid fire start-sit decisions here. Alvin Kamara or Ja'Cory Croskey-Merritt, 2 guys that I don't think anybody wants to be in a position to start, but you never know who you're missing. Teams on bye, maybe lost some guys to injury. So let's have a really gross, ugly head-to-head here, Fitz. Kamara, who you talked about as a potential drop earlier in the week on one of our shows, against Bill Croskey-Merritt, who I feel like I've been banging the table against for a few weeks in a row here now.
Yeah, this is just perverse, Worm. So to the 2-7 fantasy managers who are contemplating this decision, look, man, I do not want to play Alvin Kamara anymore. 31 or fewer rushing yards in 5 straight games. Hasn't scored a touchdown since week 1. And the pass catching production that we used to get from Alvin Kamara is just a relic of the past at this point. And now the Saints offensive line is a mess. Eric McCoy, the center, out for the season. Starting tackle Talise Fuaga out with a high ankle sprain. Chiefs just traded their other starting tackle, Trevor Penning, to the Chargers. Croskey-Merritt, bad matchup against the Lions. Commanders are a mess. I'd still go Croskey-Merritt here. And by the way, if you see an injury tag on Ja'Cory Croskey-Merritt this week, apparently it's a dental thing. So that means he's in no real danger of missing this game. And yeah, maybe he'll be like the abominable snowman and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and just be extra fearsome because he has mouth pain. That's the hope.
I loved that special growing up. That was one of my favorites every Christmas. Jake, what do you think, Kamara or Bill?
You didn't completely steal my joke, Fitz, but that was my answer was going to be this doesn't matter because anybody who needs to make this decision has already moved on to basketball. Like, they're not playing anymore, so their seasons are gone. I pick one. If you made really good argument for Croskey-Merritt. I don't love the matchup. I don't love the fact that it was his season low since week 1 in touch percentage at 50%. He's got single digits in 4 straight games. So all that being said, I was like, I'm off Croskey-Merritt. Kamara, because he's one of the last 2 people standing. And I watched Taysom Hill lead the backfield in rushing this week. Like, who the hell knows? I have him so close. I have Kamara slightly in front of Croskey-Merritt, but all the arguments, like, I won't even argue back like I did with Vidal. You can take this one. I'll just side with Fitz because I don't want to use either one of them.
For what it's worth, they are ranked in a range where possible starters, they're RB27 and RB30 in ECR, so that's
because keep putting up the fight. Don't be a dead team. I will give you that. Like, don't be that team.
Yeah, that was a gross one. Possibly gross, depending on how you feel about these guys. I wanted to throw in one with Parker Washington, even though we talked about him in the waiver wire segment. Washington or Josh Downs this week, Jake?
I'll go Josh Downs barely, just because like Parker Washington. I don't know that Jacoby comes in similar to Shaheed and immediately becomes the one or the two, because like Shaheed has that familiarity with Kubiak and he has that system. He knows it. He could come in. It might only be 70%, but immediately the two. Does the same happen for Jacoby? They're talking about playing him more outside, which would be a thumbs up, especially if Brian Thomas is out. And if Brian Thomas is out, I'd probably switch it. And it sounds like he might be. I'd probably switch to Parker Washington. But I give Josh Downs, even against Atlanta, I give him the slight edge just because I know what he's going to be. And I know that Josh Downs and what his usage is. Parker Washington should see a lot of the slot work. But what if they don't? Like, what if they use Jacoby 50% of the time in the slot and all of a sudden Parker Washington gets kicked down and all of a sudden Diami Brown is healthy and he's back out there? Like, it's just, I don't know. Diami Brown's still possible to play this week, right? Like, his status is still up in the air. Is he officially out now? So,
Diami Brown? No,
yeah.
I think he was back at practice on Wednesday. So I think he's probably playing.
It's the known factor versus the uncertainty, and that's why. If this trade never happened, Parker Washington probably would have been pushing my top 30.
Fitz?
Downs. I just want to avoid the Jacksonville wide receiver scene this week in a tough matchup against Houston.
And so even though you like Alec Pierce, you still would also go Downs? Like,
yes.
Okay. Let's go to some flexes here. How about Travis Etienne or Nico Collins, who you guys were just talking about a short bit ago? Fitz, I'll start with you on this one. Etienne or Nico?
Yeah, I'll go Nico. I'm not excited that it's Davis Mills throwing him the ball instead of CJ Stroud, but the Jaguars are in a reasonably favorable matchup for the Texans. And while Nico isn't having a banner season, he's still really, really good. I thought Etienne looked terrific last week. He'd been kind of struggling prior to the Jaguars bye with under 50 rushing yards in 3 straight games before that. But last week, 22 carries, 84 yards, and a season-high 5 catches for 31 yards. We didn't get the post-bye usage bump for rookie Bashal Tutin, which was good news if you're a Travis Etienne investor. So 2 pretty good options, but I'll take Nico over Etienne.
Jake, who do you prefer?
I'm actually going Etienne, but it's slight. It's super close. They're 3 spots apart in flex. So I'm going with Etienne. I'm severely concerned about Mills with Nico Collins. That being said, one big play to Nico Collins, which any quarterback can do, could swing this either direction. And it wasn't just the fact that, like, Fitz is right. I had a lot of people telling, like, hold on to Tutin. We might get the post by bump. Or if anything were to happen to Etienne. And then not only that, it was only 2 touches, a few snaps, but LaQuint Allen even got usage in that game. So much so to the point that Tutin is just not going to be a factor, it looks like. So I'm going Etienne, but I have him super close.
LaQuint Allen actually played more snaps than Tutin in that game, like 2 more.
Was it official by the end of it? Yeah.
I want to say, like, I thought I saw it was like 22-20.
Okay.
How about Tetero McMillan or David Montgomery, Jake?
I'm going David Montgomery. Like, I just, the entire Panthers offense, and it kind of goes back to what we talked about a few weeks ago with Tetero McMillan. Yeah, the volume's there. Yeah, the volume's cool, but it's still coming from Bryce Young. And unless he gets a touchdown, which has happened in one game, fortunately twice, to save his day, like, I just don't, like, Tetero McMillan on 25 other teams, and we'd be so much more excited for him. But also, they're playing the Saints, and they don't even need to turn to him. Like, if you're playing the Saints and you're the Panthers, who are winning games, and you're like, hey, like, let's just not fall flat on your face, they're not going to ask Bryce Young to carry this game. And that's just why I go to it. Like even with 10 targets in 2 games, McMillan has finished as a top 20 wide receiver twice, and once was that 2 touchdown game I was talking about.
Fitz?
I'm with Jake, and line of reasoning is pretty much the same. Like, I love Tetero McMillan, love the matchup against the Saints, but I don't love McMillan's quarterback, and I'm not sure Dave Canellis does either. In Bryce Young's last 4 starts, all of which the Panthers have won, crazy that in the last 5 games, the Panthers only lost with Andy Dalton at quarterback, Bryce Young has averaged 25 pass attempts in his last 4 games. Like, Dave Canellis is actively trying to hide Bryce Young and lean on the running game, and that's good strategy. So I'm going to take David Montgomery. I think the Lions are going to be angry after losing at home to the Vikings, and they're going to take that anger out on the undermanned Washington Commanders. So I think Gibbs and Montgomery are both going to get plenty of work and put up good stats.
Here's the big question. If you guys are still alive in Survivor, do you have the guts to take the Panthers?
Oh, I am in a couple of pools, and I'm taking them in both my... Well, one's like a 3-strike pool, so everyone's kind of alive.
I had 5 pulls this year. I am down to 1 because of the bleeping Packers last week for this stupid Panthers.
Don't get me started on that one. Yeah, I am taking the Panthers. I think that's kind of the chalk play, just because you need a team that you can't normally count on.
McMillan, I'm really curious to see what the next 7 weeks look like for him. Because it has been, I mean, he has not topped 50 receiving yards in 3 of the last 4 weeks. He got the 2 touchdown game, which saved one of those weeks. But I keep watching him and going like, that's a really good player. And I just
There's no question about it.
Players, but I just it's just not, getting that ceiling. I mean, he has not topped 17 points in a game this season in half PPR scoring. And again, the game where he topped 16 was because he had 2 touchdowns. So
in that game against the Packers, it seemed like the only time they would throw to him was when they needed to pick up third more than 5. And they would keep throwing to him and he'd catch it and pick up the third and long. And that was it. Then he goes back into cold storage until the next third and long situation.
Yeah.
I got I'm not being like, haha, I've missed things and I might miss the Vidal one, but I got crucified for saying that he could probably be Calvin Ridley 2024, which was almost 70 receptions, 1,000 yards, and 4 touchdowns because he's on the Panthers, which would be a really successful rookie season, but it's only a wide receiver 3, unfortunately.
Right. Sure. Let's go to another one here. Rachaad White or Chris Olave. Of course, Rashid Shaheed no longer in New Orleans. Bucky Irving still, hurt.
Good timing. We did not practice. When we were recording this, officially just got word he and Chris Godwin did not practice again today.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not really sure what's going on there in general. But yeah, White or Olave. Jake, I'll start with you. Who do you prefer this
Rachaad
week?
White. Yeah, Rachaad White. It would have been Rashad. I would have went to Chris Olave if Bucky Irving was coming back, and not even expecting Bucky Irving to get the full workload coming back. But the fact that he's still not out there on a Thursday, can anybody tell us what's going on with Bucky Irving and Ricky Pearsall? These guys were 1-2 weeks, 3 maybe 3 weeks, and all of a sudden it's half the season, and it's they didn't even put him on IR, and it's still they're not back. But anyway, it's Rachaad White. Even though I do think Rachaad White is splitting more with Sean Tucker than some people might realize.
Yeah, Pearsall is at the point where when you get that notification Wednesday, not practicing again this week, I just you have to laugh. I can't wrap my head around how this thing has gone. Fitz, White or Olave?
It's funny. Jake and I were normally we have so many disagreements, and this time we were itchy and scratchy fighting over Kamani Vidal, but otherwise we've been in lockstep. I'm going Rachaad White here. Even though he's going up against a Patriots defense, it's pretty much been a brick wall for opposing running backs. But the nice thing with White is that he's a good pass catcher, so he always has that alternative path to fantasy value if he can't get anything done on the ground. I know Olave would seem to have an enhanced target outlook with Rashid Shaheed out of the picture, but rookie QB Tyler Shuck is he's still trying to find his footing. The Saints are down 3 starting offensive linemen. I'm just not especially eager to play any New Orleans Saints this week.
Well, and I'm not saying you didn't because I know you do, but for people out there, if you watch that game too, it was similar to the situation with Lawrence and Thomas to start this year. Shuck and Olave were not on the same page the way that Shuck and Shaheed were.
Yeah, it did seem like Shaheed was Shuck's guy.
Mm-hmm. Last flex one here. Romeo Doubs or Kenneth Walker. Fitz, who do you like better?
I'll go with Doubs. Jordan Love is probably going to have to lean on him pretty heavily with Tucker Kraft done for the season. Walker's it's such a frustrating timeshare with Zach Charbonnet, and his passing game usage is kind of drying up. Hasn't had more than 2 targets in a game since week 1, so I'll go Doubs.
Jake?
I was going to say, can you tell me whether or not it's going to be a week that Walker scores a touchdown? Because that really would come down if he scores a touchdown. But to Fitz's point, we're going to keep agreeing here is that it's just I know Doubs has been the number 1. He's the number 1 or number 2, even with Watson getting back to 100% and in the fold. They're the top 2 options until Reed comes back, which is still a few weeks away. And any given week, it's Walker, Charbonnet. One looks better than the other. And it always seems to be the one that gets fewer touches looks better than the other, which is the weird thing about it. But it should be Walker. But whether or not he gets into the end zone is going to be the difference between if he's just a flex play or top 15 running back. So I would just take Doubs in that situation.
Quarterback, Jacoby Brissett or JJ McCarthy this week, Jake?
I'm just going to shoot for the upside of McCarthy. I know the Raven, and you have heard me because I've talked to you for 2 straight weeks now. The Ravens are getting healthy, and they're getting healthy in the secondary. But the rushing upside of McCarthy, when it comes to quarterbacks, and I get to quarterbacks outside of, like I have Jared Goff at 12, Sam Darnold at 13, even though he's been remarkably consistent. By the way, did you know Sam Darnold, the only 2 quarterbacks with fewer passing attempts per game? Hurts and Lamar Jackson. That's the conversation he's in for how efficient he's been. Just to throw that out there. I just want to throw it as a nugget. But I'm saying once I get past Goff, I'm shooting for upside. Like, I just don't want QB 17. And I feel like that's what Brissett is. And as Fitz has brought up many times, Seattle not even that good of a matchup. So I'm just going to shoot for the upside of McCarthy.
I had dinner with a bunch of folks from Fantasy Pros last night because a handful of them are out here in Denver for a work thing. And one of the founders of the company was asking me about the Ravens defense, just knowing I'm a Ravens fan and what I thought, to try and decide if he should make a bet, on the Ravens this week. And I was like, honestly, like, I'm just really interested to see this game. Like there's I could see JJ McCarthy going in any direction. I could see the Ravens defense going in any direction. I could see like Lamar against the Minnesota Blitz in any direction. Like, I'm really just quite interested by this game. So I was curious. I really wanted to include him in this conversation to see what you guys thought.
Selfishly.
Yeah. Fitz, though, I know you had JJ McCarthy as a quarterback streamer that you liked this week. So does that mean that you're going to go with him, or would you go with Brissett?
I have Brissett ranked 1 spot higher. I think it's really close. Brissett's just been really good as a passer. So 2 touchdown passes and at least 261 passing yards in all 3 of his starts. And he's even adding a little bit of rushing value. He had the touchdown run against Dallas last week, and he had 45 combined rushing yards in the 2 starts before that. So I know Seattle's a really tough matchup. But then again, so was Green Bay, and he did just fine in that game. McCarthy, to Jake's point, certainly does have more rushing potential than Brissett does, but he's still kind of finding his way as a passer. He's just getting way too many sacks. Like, and the sacks are just, they short circuit drives. And that is why he hasn't had more than 158 passing yards in any of his 3 starts. Oh, and 4 interceptions too, which obviously short circuit drives. So flashes of promises of potential for JJ McCarthy, but nothing to suggest that there is a 300-yard passing day lurking around the corner.
Tight end here. How about George Kittle or Rondé Gadsden? We do a lot of these like kind of borderline tight end starts a lot. I wanted to do one that was realistic. You could have this setup. You could have drafted Kittle, who's injured early. You picked up Gadsden, and now you actually have to make this decision between the big name guy or the guy who's just been very good and this really awesome surprise the last month plus. They're ranked 2 spots apart in ECR, Gadsden ironically being higher. They're both inside the top 5, but I think this is a choice that people might have to make. So Fitz, I'll start with you here. George Kittle or Rondé Gadsden this week?
This is like a coin flip. I have Kittle ranked 1 spot higher at the moment, but I've already switched these guys back and forth in my rankings twice. Gadsden, pretty good matchup against the Steelers, who have allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to tight ends. Gadsden with at least 5 catches and 68 receiving yards in 4 straight games. But, even though he's done it for 4 straight games, I can't help but worry that one of these weeks, it's going to be Gadsden who's kind of left out of the mix on a team with 3 good wide receivers. He's due to lay an egg at some point. And I just wonder if this is the week. Kittle, it's just, I know who I think the better player is, and I'm going to go with the better player.
Jake?
We were doing so well, Fitz, and we're going to finish on 2 disagreements here, and it's close. I have Gadsden, and you just said something I said the very first Gadsden game, so I don't disagree with you in that facet, is that Gadsden is going to get left out. And then Ladd McConkey last week just kind of got left out, and then it'll be Keenan Allen that bounces back. Somebody else, like, this is just what happens when you have 4 really good options, let alone 3 options. They have 4. The difference is with Kittle, the entire career with Christian McCaffrey. See, a lot of people look at, and I'm not saying Fitz doesn't know this, but a lot of people look at Kittle and they're like, well, look at all the wide receivers. The difference has been with Christian McCaffrey on the field, and his target percentage is almost the same, that being Kittle. His usage is almost the same, but here's where he really gets destroyed. Touchdowns per target with Christian McCaffrey since 2022 when they've been together, 6.8%. With no Christian McCaffrey, 11.8. It's the difference is that without Christian McCaffrey, the touchdown equity goes up. And that's the difference. So Christian McCaffrey's healthy. Christian McCaffrey's taking all the touchdowns, taking all these targets, everything like that. So that's where I give Gadsden the slightest of edges. I have him pretty much back to back. It's just Kittle kind of takes a hit with a healthy Christian McCaffrey, and that's unfortunate. It's a slim margin, but like, you're not wrong, Fitz. And also the other part that you do say that I agree with is that I know who Kittle is. We're still seeing whether or not Gadsden's going to have consistency, but so far it's been working.
Say goodbye to start-sit dilemmas with Fantasy Pros Start-Sit Assistant. Within seconds, you'll know exactly who to play for optimal results each week. Leveraging insights from numerous experts, the Start-Sit Assistant aligns your lineup decisions with the top minds in fantasy football, giving you a competitive edge. Maximize your lineup's potential with just a few clicks. Head to fantasypros.com/myplaybook or download the Fantasy Pros app and make winning decisions in no time. We're about to get to our touchdown calls for the week, but first, join our free touchdown calls contest in the Fantasy Pros Discord. Each week, pick 4 players you think will score with a bonus flex worth double. Weekly winners get a $25 Fantasy Pros gift card, and the season champ takes home a signed Bijan Robinson jersey. Play now by going to fantasypros.com/chat and heading to the Touchdown Calls channel. Jake, you're on running back this week.
Yeah, thank you. Now 1 for 3 on tight ends. I missed Tyler Warren. I missed Tyler Warren in a week that Daniel Jones threw 1 billion times and everybody went off except for Tyler Warren. By the way, bounce back candidate this week. I'm going to go for a team that you want to talk, Fitz, you want to talk about a team that like what's left in their hearts for playing? How about the Saints? You just brought them up earlier about like not only the trade of all the pieces, the trades, the lost, and they gave up 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games to running backs. They gave up 2 touchdowns, including Swift and Monangai in the same game. They gave up 1 to Sean Tucker. So Rico Dowdle, if Rico Dowdle's name wasn't Rico Dowdle and like he was like with Chuba Hubbard in that contract, we'd be talking about him like, oh my God, this breakout running back this year. Like you put him on a different team, different jersey name, whatever it might be. Rico Dowdle have his top 5 play this week. Unless he gets hurt, he deserves to be in that top tier of running back. So yeah, I'm taking Rico Dowdle hopefully to bounce back this week for my touchdown calls.
Fitz, you're on wide receiver.
I'll go with Stephon Diggs against the Buccaneers. No Kayshon Boutte. I think that enhances Diggs' usage profile a little bit.
I am the unlucky one on tight end, by the way.
Sorry, I'm curious. Sorry,
no,
I'm
okay.
curious for fifth.
I have got Diggs at wide receiver. I think I have as a mid-range wide receiver too. Wide receiver 18. How about you?
Okay. Same. I was actually considering putting him in front of DK Metcalf, though. That's why I was kind of curious of like how moving Diggs up.
Yeah, I've got him ahead of DK.
There you go. That he needs to be one spot higher for me. Let you make the decision for me.
As I mentioned, I am the lucky one on tight end this week. I'm going with Dalton Kincaid. He's 4 touchdowns this season. He gets Miami. They're going to win. They're going to score a lot of touchdowns. I'm just going to say that he gets one of them. He's ranked tight end 7 this week. So 3 of us are going
on the Bengals.
Yeah. That would have been a lot easier for you. Unfortunate timing for my turn on tight end. Rico Dowdle for Jake, Stephon Diggs for Fitz, Dalton Kincaid for myself. You can dominate your fantasy football league with Fantasy Pros Premium, now available free for 6 months when you deposit and place your first wager on one of our partner sportsbooks. This is the easiest way to get full access to our top fantasy tools all season long. Go to fantasypros.com/premium to get started. For Jake and Fitz, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks for tuning in. Best of luck here in Week 10. We'll see you next time.
Let's go. Come on, Vidal.
Yeah.